Okay, it's been a little too long since I've done my last video, but work has just been beating me down to the point where I don't feel like doing anything in my free time. So I got this guy a month ago, close to a month ago, and I've been wanting to do a video ever since. But now I finally got the time and the motivation, so let's sit down and do this. This is the Sharp by Design Derecho. This is well, I don't know if it's the newest model because I just saw him posting about a little model now he's got with an upswept blade, but this is relatively new. I think he started shipping these out late in April. People started getting them in May. So what you can see is that this is a little bit different. We have a hawkbill blade on this one. So most of the Sharp by Design designs so far have been, I wouldn't call them plain or standard, but they've been in kind of, I would guess you would call them like more like regular blade shapes, like this guy. You've been seeing drop points, clip points. But now here we have a hawkbill, something that you don't really see all that often, I guess because it's a little bit less versatile, but we'll talk about that. So I'm going to start off the bat with the, I guess, standard comparisons. I brought a lot of stuff out for comparison here today. So we got the PM2, which is a little bit of a bigger knife. Got the feldspar, which is a smaller knife. And I'm starting to run out of room here, but I've also got the Deca, so I'll bring that out in a second. All right, so the Derecho, a little bit bigger than the other Sharp by Designs I've got, the Mini Evo and the Mini Tempest, which are, I think, both listed at 3.4-inch blades. This is a 3.5, so just slightly longer. The one thing about Sharp by Designs, they always have great blade to handle ratio. So here you see that the blade on this is actually maybe even a little bit longer than the one on the PM2, but the handle's much shorter. Now let's bring this into the picture. The Deca is definitely a shorter blade. The Deca is only a 3.25 inch, but you can see similar in handle length. And then the feldspar is a smaller knife. That's a 3-inch blade. So it's definitely smaller overall. But I always like to use this as a comparison. I like having a 3-inch blade to compare against. Now comparing to my other two models from Sharp by Design, I have the Mini, I think it's the Tempest, in front flipper configuration. Then I've got the Mini Evo in drop point flipper. So you can see here, yes, blade is definitely a little bit longer than the other two. Handle a little bit longer as well. So this is a little bit, I guess, more like one of his full-size designs, which I have not yet handled. You can also see that this is the extra fancy version, which I chose because I'm an extra fancy guy. So what you have is, ooh, I like that. Damascene steel blade done in a full polish, which is a little bit different from what you usually see. And you also have the zircuti inlays on the handle, which does make it heavier. So that's actually the first thing I noticed about this when I took it out of the box, was how much heavier it felt than these other guys. And then that's not unexpected. You know, the zircuti inlays are definitely going to weigh more than carbon fiber. Doesn't bother me because this is not something that I'm really going to be carrying. This is more of a collector's piece for sure. I love the blade. Really. So anyway, yeah, I'm terrible at staying focused in these videos and staying on a topic, but The next thing I noticed is that the detent on this is actually a lot heavier than it is on the other ones. Now, I don't know if that's intentional or just some variation in the manufacturing process. Or in some cases, when manufacturers do a sort of non-standard version, so in this case, one that has a Damascus blade, it does kind of throw off the fit a little because the etching and the polishing, that may end up actually, changing the thickness of the blade ever so slightly, and then it doesn't fit together exactly as planned, in the design. So you end up having to tighten the pivot a little bit more, or things don't line up exactly the same way. I don't know, maybe Riyadh accounted for that, and this fits exactly as planned. But I have seen other models from, let's say, Spartan blades or other brands where the action on the Damascus version was actually completely different than on the standard version. So all that being said, the action's still very good. Detent definitely heavier than on the other ones I've handled, on the other Sharp by Design models. But it's not too heavy. Still comes out just fine, still very smooth. But it does have that same sort of feeling that the other Sharp by Design models have. And for those of you unfamiliar with Sharp by Design, the sort of, I guess, primary claim to fame there is that they have a uniquely designed detent. So typically, and again, for those of you unfamiliar, what the detent is on a liner lock or a frame lock knife like this, what's holding the blade closed is actually, there's a little, it's usually a ball bearing, ceramic in this case, for anything that's done by like Riyadh or Kaiser. And it's usually inset into the lock bar, or in the lock in the case of a liner lock. And then that fits into a little hole that's drilled into the side of the blade. So that holds it shut, and it's great for flippers because when you build up the pressure on your flipper tab, enough so that it releases out of that little hole, it helps it to fly open. So Sharp by Design knives don't have that same feature. Instead of having a little ball bearing pressed into the lock, they actually have a machined feature, a little ramp instead. And so what that actually gives you is it gives you, well, it's a crisper feeling, smoother, I'm not going to use the word detent, but it's a nicer transition in the open and close. And because the machine feature, as it drags along the side of the blade when opening and closing, because it's got I guess you could say a larger surface area, it has a sort of a smoother feeling when it's opening and closing. So people rave about the feeling of the action on Sharp by Design, and that is for good reason. They really do have a very unique, excellent feeling action. Aside from that, Sharp by Design designs, they're all great. They have great ergonomics. They look cool, but they also, they don't sacrifice any functionality in that sense. So I, not too long ago, had sent off this guy, the Mini Evo, to my friend over to do a video on his channel, EDC Knife Noob, because I think that objectively this is really one of the best folding knives that you can get. It has good ergonomics, it's lightweight, it's easy to carry, it's a nice size, the blade shape is useful, and it has that great action. Plus, obviously, these are made by Riyadh, as far as I know. The fit and finish is excellent. So all those things considered, I think this is like one of the most recommendable knives that are out there. The only downside really is just that they're pricey. I think this configuration has a standard price of like $425 on retailers. They do go on sale. I think I've seen them as low as like 300, but not cheap. This guy, in the full dress, more expensive. These go for, I think, around all in, over 600. I had to sell things in order to pay for this. Not regretting it though. Look at that. I love it when a full polish is done on Damascus or Damasteel blades. I think it looks so cool. And for comparison, so I have another model here made by Riat in sort of a similar configuration with Damasteel and zircotite inlays. But you can see the difference in the way that the blade was finished. So this is, I guess, what you consider more like a standard finish on Damasteel, where there's a polish, but the polish, it looks like, is done before the etching. So you have, the more stainless portions still showing up as being rather reflective, but the sections that are done in the less corrosion resistant steel come out darker. So, they don't have the reflectivity or the luster. But you get that sharp contrast. But now here it looks like what they've done is they've done a high polish, after the etching. So the whole thing is mirror polished, but what you see in terms of the contrast is actually just, it's more like it's just that some sections are raised and some aren't. So it just catches the light in a very cool way. Out of all the ways to finish a Damascus or Damasteel blade, this has to be my favorite. Now, obviously, when you have something that's really reflective and polished like that, you kind of have to make sure that the rest of the knife is finished in such a way that it doesn't contrast with that too much, if you know what I mean. It's you kind of have to make sure it all matches aesthetically, at least in terms of, if you're trying to make it look good. So in other words, if you had this kind of really high polished blade, and then the rest of this was just like a dull finish, G10, no color, it just would look kind of odd, or at least in my opinion. So having the polish, the bright zircotite inlays, that balances out with the finish on the blade, I think it looks great. So no regrets in picking this configuration. I think that this was actually the way to go for this, because these kind of hawkbill designs, although they do work very well, I don't like them as much for EDC. So if I were going to, pick something that was going to be, I guess more of a user, like in the case of these guys, that's preferable for these kinds of more standard versatile blade shapes. But for the hawkbill, not something I'm going to use or carry as much. Perfect opportunity to go for the full dress version. That being said, I have carried this a couple times, and yes, it fits in the pocket well. The ergonomics are good, so yes, this design is still great as a user. Me personally, I'm not in love with hawkbill blades. I think, yes, they look cool. The tip is actually great for utility. That tip, if you're opening a package or something, is going to be really great for, making a pierce or being really precise. Like if you just want to get the tape on an Amazon box and you don't really want to cut into the cardboard, this is the perfect kind of tip for that. The only real issue I have with the hawkbill is that the curvature in the blade makes it a pain to sharpen, and I am someone that does like to sharpen. So this kind of curvature, no, not impossible to sharpen, but I just don't like it as much. It always sharpening on a recurve or something, it's always a little bit more irritating, because you do need specialized stones. You need a narrower stone or a rounded stone to sharpen it properly. If you use a standard stone, it can get a little wonky. You can still get a good functionally sharp edge. It just might not look great. And me being the kind of sharpening snob that I am, if it doesn't look great, then no. Anyway, this came extremely sharp out of the box. And that's one thing I have noticed about all the Sharp by Design knives that I've owned. The factory edges are all excellent, and that's really not the case. Not normally what I see from Riat. The other Riat made knives that I've had have all come in with okay edges at best. You know, sharp enough to cut paper, but not very sharp, or with some kind of wonkiness near the heel. So I don't know. Maybe Brian Nadeau, maybe he tells Riat, make sure you put better edges on them when you ship them. Maybe that's something that he has to pay extra for. Who knows? You know, I'm trying to record this video, but I just keep getting distracted by how cool this blade looks. All right, so I've been kind of rambling, but I figured let me do a little bit more of a walk around here of the knife. So you see, it's kind of the standard design pocket clip that you get with Sharp by Design. Kind of the same thing that you see. Right, not the exact same shape, but it's a machined clip that sort of mimics, I guess, what you'd see in a stamped clip. So it goes in and out of the pocket just fine. Looks good. Mine in particular doesn't bother my hand. You know, it does kind of have a semi-pointy kind of tip here, but, you know, with the size and shape of my hand, it doesn't bite in or anything. I don't notice it at all. You know, no jimping on the flipper tab, but it doesn't really need it. Works just fine. There is jimping on the spine here. And the fuller here, yes, you can use that to flick it out. I don't really find the need to in this particular case. Fills my hand well. You know, ergonomics are kind of similar to what you have on Mini Evo. A little bit of a, you know, subtle place for your index finger to fit, which I love. Nice and rounded off. No sharp edges, no hot spots. Perfect as usual from Brian Nadeau's designs. Tip is very sharp and pointy. It keeps catching on things. Actually, I've poked myself with it once or twice. Kind of awesome. Exactly what you want from a hawkbill. It's kind of like little harpoon section up here. Looks kind of cool to me as well. I guess that's really more designed to avoid your thumb from slipping too far forward. But yeah, nice touch. And not too much else to say. It is, I'm pretty sure, T8 on the pivot. I do like the way that this pivot screw looks. Have not tried to disassemble this, so I don't know if this side is captured. Don't know if it's free spinning. I assume it's not. No other hardware on the show side. Looks nice. So the only other hardware screw that, as far as disassembly, it's just this one right here. So it looks like it's simple to disassemble. No interior milling, and that's probably because you have these inlays here, so not any space for more milling on the inside. Yeah, looks good. Damasteel, I don't recall the exact composition of it, but it's not going to perform as well as something like S90V or Magna Cut when it comes to overall edge retention and toughness, but it'll do fine. Again, I'm not going to be using this one, so I'm not too concerned about the steel performance. I think the only thing that does kind of bother me slightly about this one really is just that aesthetically, I don't like this section right here being kind of in the middle of the handle. I know why it's done, because they want to make room for the tip back here with that curvature of the blade. I just think it looks a little nicer on the other models where the handle is joined all the way at the back. Again, that's a really minor nitpick, I think. But overall, I mean, this is certainly a recommendable knife, as all of the Sharp by Design models are. I have nothing really negative to say about it. The Hawkbill is, again, it's not a negative. It's a design choice. You know, that's like saying that you can't recommend a sedan over an SUV because it's a sedan. Well, some people prefer sedans. So the Hawkbill blade is not really a pro or a con. That's more of a matter of preference for blade shape. So if you like this blade shape, this is probably one of the absolute best things you can get as an example of a Hawkbill EDC knife. So yeah, highly recommendable. You know, don't know how available these are right now. I have not looked to see. I know that, you know, these were primarily done as a pre-order, and I think Brian Nadeau was planning on sending some out to some of the other retailers, distributors. Haven't really looked lately, so who knows if these are still available, but recommendable. And I think another pretty good addition to the Sharp by Design lineup. Overall, it's not my favorite Sharp by Design model. I mean, I like this one more than the other two because of the configuration I chose. But overall, I mean, I like the shape and design of the Mini Evo and the Mini Tempest a little bit more. I have not had my hands on any of the other models. I mean, the Void looks cool, but I find these as more recommendable overall just because the blade shapes are a little bit more universally functional. But I'm not going to dissuade anyone from picking one of these up. All right, I think that's all I have to say about this one. Thank you for your time.